1965 and starts talking about coming
I can never reach it.
Okay. I just got the signal from Rob that we are ready to move forward. So I'm going to call tonight's budget hearing to order. As always, the watchword is crisp. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Van Houten, our district attorney, who's going to be our first presenter. His presentation can be found on page 4-62 of your budget.
Deborah. Let's see. Okay. Matt.
We're ready.
Thank you. I will not be 35 minutes unless there are,
Well, we're very pleased to hear that. Thank you.
okay. Start off with the good news. Unless there's 25 minutes of questions, which I'm happy to answer.
There will be cross-examination.
I have started out in the past with the major influences on my budget, and they are typically the same this year as they are in the past. Discovery, criminal justice reform. Discovery reform has profoundly affected the budget and has for the last several years, as well as bail reform and other legislative action, such as parole reform, and there's pending legislative action relating to the purging of criminal convictions. Things like that do affect our daily business. Probably the biggest commitment that we make is our commitment to alternatives to incarceration and thinking outside the box as far as innovative approaches to prosecution. And it's relevant to the budget because this takes more time than traditional prosecution does per attorney. It takes more time to participate as an attorney, as an assistant DA in a specialty court like mental health court or treatment court than it does to simply prosecute someone, they're convicted, they're sentenced, and you never see them again, hopefully. With a specialty court, you're going to team meetings every week, you're going to court every week, you're monitoring the progress of the individuals in the program and ultimately coming out with someone who is hopefully more stable, more productive, more healthy. But that takes a significantly greater investment of time from the attorneys in my office, and we're happy to do that. The other major influence on the budget is the reimagining process, and that specifically translates this year to the request for another position, which is a data analyst position. And that would relate to the public safety dashboard, the need for greater transparency to the community, a greater understanding from the community of what we do and why we do it. And compiling data takes time, and time that we don't have. And this is a segue to this slide because the national capita of prosecutors per population is typically one prosecutor for 10,000 residents. And several years ago, I used this slide to get another prosecutor, and we're thrilled to have that person. We're at 9 attorneys now. I'm not complaining. I'm just using this for reference that we're still well below the national standard in terms of we could have another prosecutor and be right at the national standard for attorneys per county resident. And that relates to the investment of time that we spend on the ATIs, alternatives to incarceration and specialty courts. This is our recommended budget. If there are questions on it, I'll take them anytime. But the biggest change is a grant that we have received. This is the second year that we are receiving it, related to criminal discovery reform. That's something that came in. It was initially funded by the Manhattan DA's office, but now is funded through DCJS. And it's $245,000 that is on the table, specifically coming in related to discovery reform related expenses. And my office was able to document $191,000 of expenses that are directly related and have been on the books for several years now, starting in the 2020 budget, related to discovery reform, an additional confidential investigator, an additional paralegal, computer, internet-related expenses, digital storage, things like that. Those are all things that we've been able to get back through this grant that I think is, a fantastic opportunity that we've been able to take advantage of. Full-time equivalents, we've been operating at 15.18. That includes 3 part-time confidential investigators who are all retired law enforcement. They have to work at part-time in order to keep their retirements. It's at 16.18 with the addition of a data analyst that I believe is in the recommended budget. That would be someone who can work full-time at compiling, organizing, and publishing data related to not only the easy numbers, like how many arrests, how many prosecutions, what happens, but bail decisions, bail recommendations, plea offers, things that really will dig a huge level of transparency into what we do, which I think is a big point of the reimagining process and what we want to accomplish with that process is provide the public with an understanding of our office that they've never had before. And hopefully with that greater trust and greater understanding of the fact that we are trying to do the right thing and trying to make decisions that are with the public good in mind and with public health as really the key to public safety. So this is related to the data analyst that I just talked about. And there are no over target requests because we got the money from the discovery reform grant, and that covers the main, what I had started out as an OTR, which was the data analyst position. That is more than covered by the funds that are coming in that were already in the budget in the past years, but are being technically reimbursed by that discovery reform grant. So that would be quicker than 35 minutes. I'm happy to answer questions, but my budget is typically very straightforward. It's mostly personnel related, 95% personnel. We don't survive without the people in our office, so.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Does anybody have any questions? Rich?
The cap court, I'm curious if that's helped streamline operations and save you some operating.
Not my office specifically, because it has saved me many middle of the night phone calls. So I'm grateful for that. Before cap, somebody would get arrested at 2 a.m. and law enforcement officers would have that person in custody. They'd bring them to a judge. That judge would have to get out of bed, call a defense attorney. They would often call me, do you have a bail recommendation? That's the middle of the night phone call that I'm not getting anymore because cap results in those arraignments happening at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. But in terms of resources, not for my office.
For anybody who's not familiar, CAP is centralized arraignment, right? Okay. I've got Randy, I've got Shauna, and then Mike Lane.
Yes, thank you. I have a few questions. In the grant that you are receiving for past work, is that going to continue, or is that a?
As far as we know, it's going to continue. Those expenses that are, directly related to the discovery reform aren't going away. So the last time I heard directly from the commissioner of DCJS was at the DA's Association meeting in June, and she indicated that that was the intent.
Okay. And EMS, when they give a presentation, they talked about all the additional FOIL requests that are going on for their information. Is that part of the new discovery process? They said they're going up quite a bit.
It is. For every case that we prosecute, we are required to collect all the evidence, including the 911 calls, all of the radio traffic. That has significantly increased their workload. Absolutely.
And the county clerk mentioned about digitizing all lawsuit data and those kinds of things. Is your office digitizing everything that goes to them? Or?
Yes, we are paperless. We provide discovery to defense attorneys through the cloud. And everything that comes in, our office is scanned and put into Laserfiche as the digital repository.
Do you have to keep hard copy of that stuff or?
We keep hard copies of many things while the case is open. And then once it's closed, we get rid of those things unless they are, irreplaceable documents.
Okay, all right, thanks.
A lot of people, strangely enough, I'm the oldest attorney in the office and I love paperless. I don't bring a piece of paper to court, but some of the younger attorneys like to have the paper in their hands.
Okay,
What's your wave?
it's the power of
With my
paper.
fist.
Okay, Shauna.
Yeah, I know that very early on in the Reimagined Public Safety venture, there were some concerns about your involvement. And I wanted to see, it appears that you're asking for a data analyst. Do you feel that those concerns and your involvement in the process has improved?
Well, my major concern was my involvement in the reimagining process for the Ithaca Police Department. And that is changing for the positive. George McGonigal is now the chair of a subcommittee that is, I think, trying to right that train. And I'm actually going to a meeting of that committee later today. George had approached me to ask for my input as we talk about the reimagining Ithaca Police Department piece of that. As far as the data publication, I've been working with Mona and Lance Salisbury from Assigned Counsel and Dom and a group now that we've put together to address that. So that's been ongoing and that was always good as far as the county piece of that.
That's great. Thank you for clarifying that. I'm not sure it was clarified in the article that I read. But I guess what I'm wondering, as far as the data analyst that you're requesting, is there going to be a duplication of this job since we are going to have a data analyst in the CJC?
I don't know the answer to that. As honest as I can be, there may be some duplication. I might come back next year and say I could use someone for 20 hours a week. But I do think that it's not overlapping. There is some work, a lot of work that will come out of my office that can only be done in my office by going around and talking to the attorneys directly, because there's no case management system where this information will come from. So there's going to be a lot of legwork that person is going to be doing.
Okay, thank you.
So there might be some overlap,
I
but
think there
it's
might
not
be.
going to be duplicative.
It's not going to be duplicative, but there very well could be some overlap. And if there is, then I'm happy to scale that back.
Yeah, I think that you're only going to be able to figure that out as you move through the process.
It's uncharted territory.
Right, right. Thanks, Matt. Mike.
Hi, Matt. Thinking about space. I got another person, possibly this data analyst. Have you got space for that person?
No.
I didn't think so. I know how cramped you are up there. And why I'm raising this is because I was just recently reading that the district attorney's office in Cortland County has moved out of their courthouse into another building. And apparently that's freed up space for the city court in Cortland to move over into the county courthouse. We don't have that same pressure here because the city court has its own building, but just wondering how it might affect you if you were located not in the main courthouse, but in another building somewhere.
Well, I've been hearing threats that OCA was going to kick us out of the courthouse for several years now. And I think it's going to happen at some point. they keep expanding.
So
So,
we got kicked out.
right. I expect it to happen. I'm hoping it won't happen until we have a county office building. And, that would be the best case scenario. If it happens before then, as long as we're close, like the old jail, for example, I think would be manageable if we're close to the courthouse. I mean, we don't have to be in it, but it's ideal to be in the courthouse, but we could be close by. I mean, I think the new county office building will be just fine when that happens.
Okay, and if that happens, let's put it that way.
Okay, you know more than I do.
Well, no, I don't. I'm just saying that there's no decisions about anything have been made. A lot of people have talked about different things. We don't know what the economy is going to be. We were looking to build a center of government years ago, and then the economy tanked, and we just didn't have it. Never went ahead with it financially. But I do wonder about the adjacencies. And you've talked to that, so I appreciate that. So what will you do with this data analyst in the meanwhile?
That's a great question. I mean, they may have to have an office in the old jail. That has happened in the past, I think many years ago, where one of the DA's office employees had an office over there. I think the person is going to be spending a lot of time with the attorneys directly collecting information. So they're going to be moving around a lot. And it may be manageable to have an office in the next. I think, that's probably the least of all evil.
Thanks, man.
Hey, Randy's got another question.
Yes, Matt. Could you talk about how your caseload may have changed over the last few years? Are your cases up? Are they taking a longer time or?
Cases are, they fluctuate quite a bit. The cases that draw the most attention fluctuate significantly. There have been a lot of high profile violent crimes, shots fired cases, stabbings, things like that. Those are unpredictable. The caseload, I think, has stayed the same. We have screened out a lot of cases, and we screen out cases that we think are cases we don't prioritize to prosecute. For example, crimes of poverty, we will screen them out. We will screen out simple drug possession cases. And the point of that is we don't think those cases are priorities of the community, in my view, but also every case that we choose to move down the line and prosecute in some way, whether it's going to an alternative court or not, takes more time, significantly more time because of the discovery reform. So it's made us triage the cases differently, and we're pickier, for lack of a better word, than we were in the past. But the case load is the same.
What's a crime of poverty? I mean, what is that?
Well, you're a young mother who goes to Walmart and steals some diapers and some formula because you can't afford them. That's a crime of poverty. That person, that's a systemic issue, but that person doesn't need to be criminalized. We don't want them. They may be banned from Walmart. There are consequences, but they shouldn't be criminal consequences, in my view.
I was speaking to a manager of a local large retail store, and they just decided to just not even call the police, just let them walk out with stuff. And quite often it's bags of things. So if you get is that something to be prosecuted, or is that just a?
Absolutely. Professional shoplifters, people that
Yeah,
do
it's
that,
teams of
go
people,
town to
yeah.
town. That is something we do prosecute.
Well,
And
then-
I hope that they continue to call the police.
Yeah, they decided they're not going to try to stop them. They're just going to let it go. So, all right, I'll let them know.
Wow. Okay, anybody else? Well, thank you, Matt.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your good work. And if you have to put the data analyst in the closet, I guess we'll live with that, huh?
The closet's full.
That's right. We filled that closet last year, didn't we?
We did.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I see that Lance is here with the new Julia.
Oh.
Who you should bring up to the table and let her introduce herself to all of us. Terrific. Yeah.
Do you want me to sit there?
That's fine.
Yes. I will start out by saying hello to everyone and yes, introducing, some of you have met Susan Tosto is our new deputy department head and program coordinator, replacing Julia Hughes, who retired after 25 years. Hence the reference to our new Julia, who was known statewide for her work. But we're excited. Susan's been with us for a few weeks and she keeps coming back. So that's a good sign.
And you can find Lance's presentation starting on page 4-10 of your books.
It's, thank you. As you see our when we go into our proposal here, our main influences are you couldn't. I can.
Oh, no, it's up.
Oh, it's up.
It just wouldn't move while you.
Oh, when it moved. Okay, I'm sorry. So you see our kind of the major influences on our department that you're moving forward are been the ongoing effects of the COVID pandemic on the legal system. The main impact there is for us is more, it's been both criminal and family, but more family court. That caseload got put on hold for a while the courts were shut down, and we're still feeling the impacts on that in terms of our caseload, our ability to assign cases. The family court judges right now are setting, you file a petition, unless it's an emergency, it's going to be the initial appearance is set several months out because they're booked, no space. And then the failure of the state to finalize an increase in the 18B rates, I put it that way because their agreement on that fell apart literally at the last hours in the budget. I think there's agreement by the legislature and executive. They want to raise the rates. The legislature, the state legislature has been adamant that that's increase the state will have to bear. The executive has been more willing to putting that burden on the county, which has been a non-starter. That's created issues for us. We're now seeing a fair number of the judges signing enhanced rate orders. They have the authority to do that in family and county court. And then the ongoing process of criminal justice reform impacts us in terms of our activities. I think just like the DA's office, it has an influence on how we plan, what our costs are, how we operate on that. I put in here to give you some ideas. This is our total caseload month by month going back to 2018. The black line is this year. One thing to keep in when you look at these numbers, these are cases we've assigned. We've had a rather unique situation this year in that mainly family court cases. You know, normally we've prided ourselves on we assign out cases quickly. It's rare for a case to be sitting in our department to find an attorney for more than a week or so. We've had for months, early since January, I think really a stack of cases on Julia, now Susan's desk of 50 to 80 cases awaiting assignment. And as we wean that down, it just gets replaced. It's, you know, I think currently we have probably close to 80 cases, mainly family court on that, which you have to add in here. If you look at the criminal, the next slides are the criminal caseload. here you see the gray line is our COVID year. You see that shutdown and impact there. Criminal cases were more active. We're back up to our higher levels. For August, we plug that in. We're going to be about at where that orange line peaks, I think. So we're roughly within our historic norms for criminal cases. But there's been a change there. Then you heard Matt's presentation. More of those cases are more serious misdemeanors or felonies, which take more time for an attorney. And fewer cases are the kind of really simple, what we'd call de minimis offenses, when you look at the scale of things. So even though the overall caseload is somewhat similar in criminal cases, they're a little more significant in terms of the time each of them requires on that. And similar, if you see the next slide there, the family court caseload there, and this is the one you really have to consider when you look at those caseloads. There's probably on average each month another 40 or so family court cases awaiting assignment we had each month, probably on average. That would push that up. And we have a couple of issues. Our attorney panel shrunk a little bit in the last couple of years, particularly during COVID. Normally you lose a few people move, or you get some retirements. We've had a number of people get recruited out into institutional providers. That's an impact of the 18B rates. They want a higher steady salary with benefits that, of course, an ACP can't provide. And we've had a higher number of retirements, which is, I think you've seen across society, kind of pandemic, post-pandemic, people either cutting, semi-retired or stepping back, which has made it a little more challenging for Susan and the staff to assign. So people are kind of operating at their peak load. We're kind of like a car running at about 3,200 RPM constantly right now. So it's that's having an impact certainly on us. And a lot of that's attributed to the situation with the rates. It's harder to recruit. We're bringing on a few new attorneys, but one of the things we've had is some of the small firms here locally and in surrounding counties where we would get attorneys taking cases have essentially stopped for a while, just because they need to have their attorneys billing at $250, $350 an hour. That firm's a small business and they have to produce income to meet their needs, and 60 and 75 doesn't meet their cost figures. So we've had some loss there, reduction in caseload. We get the rates, if we expect the rates to go up, that participation, we're going to see, greater access. So that'll help, that's, kind of the long-term or fundamental solution to our caseload issues is if and when that occurs on that. You see our recommended budget for this year is $2,073,637. We've been able, if you go back, even going back to about 2017, we've been able to keep our budget relatively stable in terms of for the most part, no major increases. A lot of that is the revenue. The revenue you see is a small piece of that is the intermunicipal agreement with Schuyler County for our work there, payments for our work there. Most of that are our state grants that come from the Office of Indigent Legal Services, and those have been increasing. And what you're seeing here are the reimbursement rates. We've been able to keep costs down. For instance, this year we had to replace all our computers. That was $10,000. We're going to be able to step out. We have a reimbursement filed. The state's going to reimburse us for that cost. So it comes off essentially the county books. We also, a lot of the support services that we provide, we now can charge to the state and instead of the county. Similarly, some of our parts of our specialty court costs, we can also charge out to the state as well. And that's one of the reasons we've been able to kind of maintain a relatively stable budget figure over the past few years. On that, we expect that to continue. Probably getting ahead of myself, but good news you won't see this year, but next year and the year after, and hopefully after that. We've never been able to supplant county spending with our state grant money. It's you're not supposed to be able to do that because of, you heard Matt talk about the time discovery requires now. It's the same thing for the defense attorneys. A significant increase in time they have to spend reviewing the material. The state now in the future is telling us we're finalizing a grant with them. We can charge out some of those attorney voucher costs for the first time related to discovery. So that'll help us in the future maintain, keep our attorney costs, our mandated costs steady. We shouldn't see, well, unless the state does something silly with 18B rates, but absent that, that'll help us keep those rates, our budget under control. And you see, we have no over targeted requests this year.
So thank you, Lance. Does anyone have a question for Lance? Mike Lane and then Mike Sigler.
Hi, Lance.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking I'm looking at you. I'm sorry.
You get double teamed though after me. You talked about the Schuyler County contract. And I remember when that got started, they were having trouble having attorneys in Schuyler County and we had a bigger pool over here. Now you're telling us our pool's getting smaller. Are we still able to support them over there with our pool?
Yes, we are. And one of the benefits of that's come to us is that pool is small and is a significant number of that panel are our attorneys. When I say our Tompkins County based attorneys, but we're able to pull those attorneys in, particularly in family court, to come in here to help us out as well. I have a couple of newer attorneys on the Schuyler County panel who are based out in, really they're Steuben County based. And we've gotten them to take some cases here because we can kind of fold them in. So we're still able to do that, without really impacting us. That was always a concern. We don't want to impact our representation here by going elsewhere, but we're able to pull in some people from time to time to assist us. So it's been some benefit that way, and it hasn't undermined our ability here yet.
But the other question I had is about space. In the past, we've heard that there's some reluctance to have assigned counsel like in the same building with the DA because the clients are coming in and out of the building. And I wondered if that is an issue if we were to have a building that had both assigned counsel and the district attorney's office and maybe other offices.
It can be in theory. The problem becomes if you can have people who are uncomfortable coming in, if they feel like, for instance, it would be very problematic if, for instance, you walk into the atrium, let's say there's an atrium in the building, assigned counsel sits here and the DA sits here. Or I guess the worst case would be the sheriff's department sitting there. It's going to cause, people are going to be reluctant to come see you. Would impact our program effectiveness. There are times, for instance, sometimes you'll get, someone will come to the office and they've kind of fallen off the map and they say, I can't remember who my attorney is. I think there's a warrant. I need to know who my attorney is. I want to resolve this issue. If they think they're going to run into the DA, their law enforcement there, they may be less willing to do that. There are some issues. If you had, for instance, if you're in the same building, but there are separate entrances, kind of like day reporting has its separate entrance in the DSS building, so you don't enter the main space. That may be less of an issue. On that, you also, there are potentially some issues there. I mean, it's something I'm always happy to sit down and try to think out and work through to see. On that, I know we've had my department, I think like many have met with the planning process in terms of the new building, what are our space needs and so forth. I know that's changing, perhaps with thinking of bringing the DA into that building. I'm always happy to look at it and say, I think this is workable, or I think this is not, depending on the situation. That has been kind of an issue. And I think in many or most places, they try to separate the two out and keep them for that reason. But I'm always happy to look at things, and see if we can make it work.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mike Sigler and then Ann Corman.
It's just kind of a budgeting question. I had been talking to a friend of mine. I guess he was in a meeting with you. It was about appearance tickets and how people, they're kind of going to court and they don't have counsel. I didn't know if that was a funding issue, if that was the nature of appearance tickets, or what kind of the situation was.
With appearance, well, I lost a little of it, but let me add what
Right.
there with appearance tickets, there are a couple things going on and a couple things we're addressing using state funds. There's an increase, in the number of appearance tickets. So kind of two things there. One is there's always been a historical, even going back before bail reform, a historical number of people who get appearance tickets who are slow to appear, shall I say. It takes a bit to get there. And sometimes if it goes long enough, a nice gentleman from Derek's office will show up and help them get to court. On that, we've had issues with the pandemic, with court shutdowns. A lot of people who had appearance tickets, the courts were shut. People's phones, addresses changed. So you have a kind of a category that are MIA there. And we're trying to come up with some thoughts. I have some plans where we try to get those people into contact with us ahead of time, and we can help get those, resolve that issue. The other thing we're doing with appearance tickets, we're moving forward on, and I've been doing this in city court with some law students to try to work through and figure out what the technical issues are. The state has made it clear it's statutory. They want everyone who appears for an arraignment to have an attorney present. And, we do that with our cap arraignments. Someone who comes in before the judge, there's a defense attorney there. We're going to be providing now an attorney in all the local courts, and we're doing a slow rollout on this. Starting with city court, because that's our biggest and busiest court. Just like a cap arraignment, to handle the arraignment, the release status. And it also assists, sometimes someone will come in with they'll appear, for instance, let's say a disorderly conduct or a harassment. And it may, someone, at times it's someone with no criminal history. The DA's office will look at that and say, the background is It's pretty silly. It was and there's really nothing criminal here. We're going to offer an ACD to the person. So the attorney there can then explain, what does that mean? Here's what you have to do. Here's, take them through the steps so they get some advice. Some of it is if, they're appearing on a criminal warrant, get their background so they can discuss with the court the proper release status, which can range from a release under recognizance to, in some cases, bail, and help them get channeled into either assigned counsel or returning an attorney, and getting them, once you have attorney contact with someone, you get that process, you tend to get a more efficient, a better result than, what happens now, where courts generally, they may tell someone, they give them our applications, they go to assigned counsel, come back in a couple of weeks. Sometimes they do, sometimes they're slow getting it done. They have to adjourn it again on that. So if we have someone there handling those appearance ticket arraignments, it should make the process much faster, keeps us in compliance with the state, and it's all state money. The state's covering that cost. So it's not a cost to the county. It's in one of our grants.
Thank you, Lance. And we don't want to wander too far afield from budget questions.
Funded, so it's good.
Okay. So Annie?
Thank you. So Lance, thanks for your report here. One of the things that I was thinking about what you said early on was that if your staff is operating at their maximum capacity, I think you might have touched on this, but what's the waiting period? How much does this slow down cases? So for instance, family court or other, what's the waiting period to get someone assigned from your department?
It can now be as much as a few weeks or so. What we're doing is we kind of triage it. So in criminal cases get a bit more of a priority because there are constitutional mandates. The DA, everyone has to meet on a criminal case, and they move. But if we prioritize the family court cases, if it's an emergency, where someone has gone in on an order to show cause, if you have a family offense or something where there's a removal, we prioritize those, try to get those assigned ASAP. If we come in and it appears to be in a lot of these are custody cases, in the initial appearance on a custody case, let's say it's October 19th, and there's nothing timely or critical to that other than, getting them assigned, that can take a little longer. You're going to be in the queue and we're going to work through it as fast as we can. But the thing is, we used to assign those in a week, and now it can take up to several weeks, unfortunately.
But you're not missing court deadlines.
No, pretty much. No, we haven't. I mean, if we get up on the ones we get crunched on, are you get a felony with a prelim and you have a lot of conflicts with attorneys that can't cover it. Then we have myself that can go in and handle that appearance and in order to provide that coverage. So we're not missing, we're not creating missed deadlines.
Yeah. So your triage is pretty much driven by the court deadlines that you have to meet. Yeah.
Yeah. And if there's an emergency situation,
Okay. Thank you. Annie, did you have anything else?
Just one last thing I just noticed for the overtime. So you're not really having much overtime accumulating. Is that because you're able to stay, as you said, keep up to date with the court deadlines, or is it because your staff works more than 40 hours, and they don't get paid for that?
No, we're pretty, I may accept myself that my other half would complain about that, but if staff was working, if my staff was working continually beyond their allotted, what we've hired them to do, I'd take that to administration. I wouldn't personally find that acceptable to do that to the staff. It's really more of a burden on the attorneys who are there. But no, we're able to avoid pretty much over time with our operations.
Well, thank you very much for all that you and your staff do, an important service to the community.
Thank you.
Randy.
Yes, thanks for the caseload data. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I helped a young person who did something stupid and ended up needing to go to court. And so I was there for just, to push him forward. And the judge asked if anybody didn't have counseling. So there was a assigned counsel person there who then helped him, and he did help him. So I just want to let you know that. So
Yeah, great. Thank you.
But a question on the mandated assigned counsel, is that all people that are just attorneys that we use, or is that also our people in that number?
No, that number is the attorney costs. That's why it's the mandated attorney costs.
Okay.
It's a separate budget line. We have kind of three budget lines: 1170, 1171, 1172 with internally. 1170 is just our administrative costs in our staff. The mandated costs are I think what you're referring to, seeing, are the attorney costs.
So the attorneys that we appoint to help, and those are the ones who are getting the $65 or $75 an hour, and that
Right,
adds up
correct.
to that?
Yeah, that's what we're budgeted at. And we are seeing enhanced rate orders occurring more frequently now, primarily county court, family court on that. I think even with that, we're going to stay within our budget this year, covering those costs.
So maybe that was the issue that it didn't get passed. Is better who would pay for it? Is that the issue? Or
Yeah, that was and it kind of occurred in everyone expected it. I think it was essentially, it fell apart the last day or night of the state legislature, when they're hammering out the budget. It fell apart there. It became an impasse over, the executive had concerns, I think, suddenly over having that cost, who was going to pay for it. And fortunately, I think it's a good sign. The state legislative leaders were like, no, we're not passing that cost to the counties.
Thank you.
Want
to make sure that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does anybody have another question? Greg?
Yeah, this is just a quick question, follow up to Mike's question. My own curiosity, I apologize for not knowing this. Where are you? Where is your office
The
located?
Center Ithaca.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Hey, thank you. I have one question for Susan. How do you spell your last name? Thank you. Just want to be sure that we can all contact you if we need you. Thanks very much, and welcome to county government. All right, moving on, we have probation. Dan Cornell, I know you're there somewhere. And you can find Dan's presentation on page 4-165 of your book.
Are you ready for me to start?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Our 2023 budget presentation, if I can figure out how to move the screen.
Actually, Norma's
in control. It's for the probation and community justice. Just a quick overview of the services we provide. Our mandated services are criminal court investigations and supervision. We provide the same for the family court investigations, supervisions, and adoptions as well as pretrial reports and pretrial supervision. Non-mandated services that we currently provide: day reporting, electronic monitoring, supervised community service program, we call the SWAP program. We took over monitoring of conditional discharges from Stop DWI, and we are in charge of running the county's DWI Victim Impact Panel, also previously a Stop DWI program. So our budget has gone up slightly. We have a 5% change in overall expenditures, $182,000. Slight decrease in revenue that's can be accounted for, and fewer DWI supervisions coming in. So we collect a DWI supervision fee of anywhere between $5 and $30 a month for each DWI client. With fewer DWI clients, the supervision fees have naturally gone down. And due to the pandemic and unemployment, financial struggles, we've noticed also a reduction in the supervision, or I'm sorry, the restitution collection fees. We charge a 5% surcharge for all the restitution that we collect. We've noticed the decline in those payments and also a corresponding decline in the 5% surcharges that we've collected. We've gone from 2020, 30 staff of 36 to a staff of 32. We feel that that's where we still need to be with the with the current workload. I feel we're fairly right-sized for the amount of tasks that we're doing. So we're not asking for any additional employees. And as this was a maintenance of effort budget, and we're not requesting any additional resources, it's asking for a 6% overall budget increase, which I believe is largely accounted for by the 3% salary increases for 2023 that are contractually negotiated. An increase in longevity payments to long-term staff, and we also increased the money that we pay to our contracted service agencies for day reporting after denying them a raise for 2 years due to the pandemic. So we agreed to raise the amount that we're currently paying to Cornell Cooperative Extension, Alcohol and Drug Council, and to BOCES for the programs they provide in day reporting. And that is as short and sweet as I can get it to you.
That was terrific. Thank you, Dan. Does anybody have questions for Dan? Mike Lane.
I was going to ask if you could turn your camera on so we could see you. That's thanks for doing that. I just wondered you went from 36 a couple of years ago to 32 FTEs. Is that in the probation officers or in support? What I'm wondering is, what's your caseload for your probation officers now? And I think you said, you're able to handle it, but have we had to increase their caseload?
Actually, with bail reform and fewer arrests during the pandemic, our numbers are relatively stable. Average caseload size, I'd say roughly 30 per probation officer, which is very, very manageable and within the recommended best practices. The staff that we lost 2 support staff, and one was an administrative person. We lost our workforce development specialist and a probation officer. And who was the fourth?
It was the vacant RTA officer.
Thank you. Laurel reminds me, we had a vacant spot for Raise the Age that the numbers didn't justify us filling that position, so we gave that position up it was never filled, so we didn't hire a person and lose them.
That helps. I appreciate it. And please pass on that we really appreciate all the hard work that your department does and the probation officers do. We know it's not a fun job with some of the time, and we thank you for it.
Thank you very much. We enjoy what we do.
Anyone else with a question for Dan? Dan, I just want to say I appreciate your really judicious approach to how you use your staff and don't, beef up your staff unless you need to. So we appreciate that. But as Mike's question suggests, if you reach a point where you do have to add staff, please let us know.
I appreciate that very much.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And I guess now we can move on to the county historian. Is she here? We're kind of running ahead of schedule, so let's see. I don't see anybody from IAED here yet or Workforce New York. So perhaps we can take a break while Lisa and Norma try to goose people along.
We sent out notification this morning saying that we were tending to run ahead of schedule and ask people to be here early, and we will continue to prod them to.
Everybody take a break, and when our next presenter comes in, I'll bang on the gavel. Thank you. ED's information on page 5-24 of your budget book. Jeez. Okay, Heather. Oh, okay, Rob, can she hear us? Okay. Heather, can you hear us? Yeah, Heather, you're muted if you can hear us.
Hi.
Hi, okay, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So, you know, we're running ahead and we appreciate the fact that you're able to come early. So take it away.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and bring up my presentation. Thanks so much for having me. I was really looking forward to coming over to see all of you in person, but you know, I'm so impressed. Budget meetings are going ahead of schedule. What can I say?
Whip them into shape.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. I'm Heather McDaniel. I'm the president of Ithaca Area Economic Development, where we are dedicated to building a thriving and sustainable economy that improves the quality of life in Tompkins County by fostering the growth of business and employment. Okay, so the county does have a 5-year MOU with IAED, and this is the MOU goes through 2023. So 2023 would be the 5th year of the 5-year MOU for IAED to provide economic development services countywide. And our budgeted amount in the MOU is $271,052, which is a 2% increase over last year. I'm going to talk to you a little bit, just give you a little overview of the major things that IAED does. One of those major things is strategic planning on behalf of the county. We have done 3 or 4 countywide economic development strategies. We just completed the update of the countywide intermunicipal water and sewer infrastructure study, which provides all the municipalities and all the water and sewer providers in Tompkins County with information as they plan for planned growth and development opportunities to work together and provide for more redundancy and resiliency in the county. And we did partner with the Tompkins County Department of Planning to do that. We also, during the pandemic, put together a Tompkins County economic recovery strategy with all of our resource partners that has real concrete actions that we're all undertaking today and in the next several years to ensure that our economy recovers in the most fruitful way possible. Another thing that we do is we run initiatives, we get involved in initiatives. I'd like to say that we're really good at starting initiatives, collaborating with our partners, and then finding other partners that might take on those initiatives over the long term. So our newest initiative this year, Direct to Work, which is a manufacturing employment training program, we launched in June, and I'm looking forward to at some point in the future sharing some of the success stories about some of the young people that went through the program and the long-term career opportunities we're engaging with them for. We are also currently working on a commercial kitchen feasibility study that was the result of a small grant from the Ithaca Urban Renewal Agency. We have been working on for a few years now a Lansing broadband project that started out as a 17-mile middle mile dark fiber line to serve unserved households. It has turned into way many more miles than that in adjacent counties and other partners. And we're hoping to start construction on that line later this year, early next year. So the project is moving forward. The Chainworks development, the former Emerson Power Transmission Facility, is the largest redevelopment opportunity that any of us will see in our lifetimes. Over 98 acres, just a stone's throw from downtown Ithaca. It is not in a floodplain, it is on a hill. Almost 850,000 square feet of buildings, tremendous opportunity for a true live, work, play kind of neighborhood. They have rebranded and it will no longer be called Chainworks. I hear it's going to be called Southworks because it's on South Hill. Another couple multi-year project that we're working on in conjunction with the Southworks project is a sort of a landing space for emerging tech companies that are graduating out of the 2 incubators on Cornell's campus and Rev Ithaca Startup Works downtown. Just some examples of some of the initiatives that we get involved in, some multi-year, some single year, but we tend to have a few things going at all times. We provide leadership not only in Tompkins County on issues that are important for businesses, anything from housing to energy to water and sewer, but also at the regional level, at the state and the national level. So I'm headed to Oklahoma City next week to represent Ithaca at the International Economic Development Council. And really, one of the big things that we do is we provide direct services to businesses, primarily manufacturers, high-tech companies, companies that sell a service or a product outside of Tompkins County. They tend to drive the need for all the local services, retail, restaurant, commercial, and even some tourism activities. We do that in a variety of ways. I always say, many of you have heard me say before, that the Industrial Development Agency is our single largest local tool to support not only industrial development, but also lots of other community benefits such as housing, affordable housing, energy efficiency, community vitality, and downtown revitalization, where we phase in new property taxes in exchange for a lot of those benefits in our community. We also manage the Tompkins County Development Corporation, which provides essentially low-cost financing to not-for-profit projects. We don't loan money. We're a conduit issuer to the tax-exempt bond market. Our largest competitor is the State Dormitory Authority. So we like to work with not-for-profits in our community, and all those fees come back to the community and support economic development right here locally, rather than supporting the state's general fund. We have managed a revolving loan fund program since at least 1985, serving smaller businesses, equipment, working capital, sort of gap financing where a bank might not be comfortable with a 2 or 3 year old business and their growth plans. We also provide some early stage equity investment into some of the startup companies that we're seeing come out of Cornell University and actually stay right here in Ithaca. We also spend a lot of time meeting with businesses, understanding their needs, delivering direct incentives, or referring them out for other resources, either at the region, the state, or the national level. And this slide shows some of our outcomes that we measure over the term of our 5-year investment initiative. This is 4 years, 2019 to 2021. The projects that we have worked with directly have invested over $500 million in our community. That's investment that creates new tax base and new property taxes for the municipalities, the school districts, and of course the county. Those companies have created 550 new jobs and retained over 3,400 jobs, $33 million in new payroll. And when we're creating jobs, retaining jobs, and adding new payroll for companies, that means that people can afford to buy things. They can afford to spend money in our community. They can afford to rent or buy a home, and the benefits spin from there. I added this photo in here so that everybody could see that this is Library Place, very close to the legislature behind the fence. There's actually a lot of activity going on. They are starting the wood framing on that building, and they have 12 weeks to do it. I think this picture was taken about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So construction is underway. And then my other favorite company right now is Rosie. If anyone doesn't know, Nick Nikitas was a Cornell undergrad and graduate student, started this company while he was a student. And he's located here. He's got over 50 employees downtown. And Rosie was just acquired by Instacart, which for every startup company, your goal is to sell and go on and do your next thing. Nick will stay with Instacart. The company will actually keep this division here, growing their market share of small independent supermarkets in the Midwest, which is exactly what Rosie did. So big success story here in the news recently. And I should say, before I say thank you, that, you know, when I was meeting with Nick all those years ago and he was saying, hey, can you do it? Can you give us a loan? Can you loan money to us? And I kept going, yeah, you don't have a location. You don't have any employees. You don't really have any collateral. You don't really have any cash flow. He'd call me every 6 months. We finally took a chance on him. We did a loan. We brought in another regional loan fund and did a loan together. It was a big part of the decision for Nick to stay right here in Ithaca. So that's, you know, some of the sort of homegrown work that we do and how we help to keep companies and grow companies right here in Ithaca and Tompkins County. So we're a small but mighty team, a team of 5. We get up every day and work really hard to support Ithaca and Tompkins County, to support business and workforce development. And I want to thank you all for your support because it does contribute to a thriving and sustainable economy. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Heather. It's good to know that the Rosie people will be staying here, even if they're operating under another name. Does anybody have questions for Heather? Okay, I don't see any. Wow.
This is a tough bunch.
You know, I think it's just that we've eaten so much chocolate, we're comatose.
Well, thank you for slotting me in. And I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to share just even a little bit about what we do.
Okay, thanks, Heather. Thanks for showing up a little bit ahead of schedule. We appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. You as well.
Okay, good night. All right, so let's, Joe, are you here to represent the county historian? Well, we have the workforce people here. So if you don't mind waiting until Carol can be here, we'll just move ahead with the, let's see, what was the next one? I always get you guys. Okay, Workforce New York is next, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's on page 4-222 of your books. And who are we welcoming? Melissa.
I'd like to introduce Melissa Kacchi. She is the interim director of Office of Employment and Training, and with a whole week of in that title. So she's been briefed about the budget. We worked with her predecessor, Jackie Muyeso, to put this budget together. And but I think you're provide as much support as you need along the way.
Well, we just love to throw people in the deep end of the pool. So yeah, thanks, Melissa. Swim away.
Use your microphone.
Use your microphone,
About
please.
6 inches away.
Is that better? Yeah,
Yep.
okay, thank you. Thank you for having me overall, and I planned on introducing myself, so I guess I don't need to do that. So just a brief kind of overview for anyone who isn't familiar with what we do at Workforce. A lot of our programs and our funding are through the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity, several programs. adult and dislocated workers, as well as our youth programs, Job Link, which runs all year, and our summer youth employment that is specifically in the summer for students. Overall, you can see from 2022 to our target this year. No OTRs. Sorry. Our full-time equivalents. Mild change from 2020. In 2022, we were at 9.4, which is our target and recommended for 2023. We do have vacancies right now. So overall, no target requests, 2 vacancies as of September 1st that we hope to fill in the coming month or so. And then if there are any questions.
Wow, that was just crisp. We aim for crisp. Thank you. And I was just curious because before we take questions for anyone else, I noticed that your budget as it's presented in the book, it has like 0 budget impact on the county. Is that in fact the case? Because it says net department net local 0. So how does that work? And this is probably a question for Lisa and or Norma, and you're off the hook, Melissa.
So the budgets, there are certain funds that are that show up in the interfund rather than in the program budgets. The D fund, which is the highway, DM, highway machinery, and workforce all show up under the interfund. I'm trying to give you a page number. That is on section 4, page 120.
So where does that money come from? I mean, what?
I'm sorry.
So it's an interfund transfer of some kind. So where is it coming?
It is a general fund. It does hit the general fund.
Oh,
It
okay.
is- Yeah, it is a budgeted item that comes out of our tax levy.
Okay. All right. Thank you. But wait. I thought the general fund and the levy were 2 different things. So money in the general fund is money that we have set aside, as opposed to money we're taking out of next year's levy.
That would be, so you're referring to the fund balance.
Right.
So we have the fund balances and then we have the general fund, and whatever we don't have in our general fund is what our tax levy will be.
Okay.
But it all goes into the general fund.
Okay. I think. Greg?
So interfund is like a department of sorts because it's its own account that is budgeted based on a number of different other departments.
So the
allocation.
A fund contributes money to all of these other special funds. The CD, the D, the CL, CT, they're all separate funds. You'll see in here this year, there's an airport, there's a contribution to the CT fund as well. And that we'll go over in a couple weeks.
So for this process, it's really not net. This budget is.
It does not net 0, no.
It's not net 0. So it essentially is.
It's just on a different page.
Yep. It's so on it's 9502. There's 470,669. That is the general revenue. That's the general funds portion of the workforce development budgets.
So if we see interfund as a line item, we should
need to
go
go
back
to-
to page 4-20,
Correct.
120.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Does
So you
anybody
think you
else
got
have,
it?
does anybody else have any questions? Mike Lane?
And maybe this is for Lisa, but have we got the lease issues all worked out on this one with Department of Labor?
Yes, I think we do. And that was with help through the Workforce Development Board, who pays for the lease arrangement within Center Ithaca. But yes, that was a long-standing issue prior to the pandemic that we worked out this year with the State Department of Labor.
So you don't have to deal with that one, Melissa.
We'll find something else for you, don't worry. Does anybody have any other questions for Melissa? Okay, well, that was pretty easy and painless, right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, well, welcome, welcome to your new position and we look forward to working with you. Thanks. And I guess we can now welcome Rosemary for our Workforce Development Board.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
And Rosemary's budget is on page 4-220 of your book. Norma, how did you get stuck running everybody's
Well,
PowerPoints?
It's a story that we won't go into.
Okay.
I just shared. Didn't share. Let's try that again. Oh, okay.
Hey.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Norma.
You're welcome.
Just a quick backstory why OET is always mentioned related to Workforce Development Board. We do their program and financial oversight. And so you'll see that in the interfund revenue, it's always tied back to Workforce Development Board. And I'm happy to come to a PDEC committee and share more information of how that relationship and structure works. Quick backstory, our board is made of 24 board members, 51% private sector led, 49% agencies, community-based, union, education, and economic development. It's a formula that I do not create. It's a formula that the New York Department of Labor creates. I just input the names and the businesses and it generates that percentage. So by law, we need to be at 51% private sector, 49% the rest of the agencies. And as of now, we're fully board. Our board is full. So the Workforce Development Board administers over 1.7 million in federal, state, and local funds for workforce services with a very rigorous and complex fiscal and program requirements. We have program monitoring and fiscal monitoring. And so we want to make sure we're in compliance and it's a very complex work we do behind the scenes. So we, like Melissa mentioned, we do WIOA. We're driven by WIOA programs. So we do WIOA dislocated worker, WIOA adult, WIOA youth. We also manage the summer youth employment program, which for second year, we have had the privilege of having Park Foundation grant to supplement the program to serve more youth in our community. And we recently started, as of January 1st of 2022, we started a 3-year pilot program with the DRC, which that position is hosted at the Office of Employment and Training. And that used to be a similar or is a similar program as a Disability Employment Initiative, which is a DEI. Thank you. So our budget, only an increase of 12% of around $75,000 this year. And we have 3 full staff. So it's myself, the deputy director, and a workforce development associate that's currently vacant. And 85% of the time of fiscal coordinator, Diane, who works 85% of the time for the Workforce Development Board and 15% of her time at the Office of Employment and Training, OET. And no over target requests. Any questions?
Any questions for Rosemary? Wow. Mike Lane.
What issues are the members of the board tackling with the shortage of labor and all? What are the important things that they're discussing?
Sure. Entry-level positions, right? Retaining, replacement, and retention. So one of the things we're looking at is creating a project or initiative where entry-level workers have support outside of their employment, and that is by a job coach or success. And that's something we're closely looking at because that's not only attracting
and making sure individuals are placed in the right sectors and industries, but also how do we retain, support any challenges or barriers they face. And the industries, to be specific, is healthcare, education, tourism, and hospitality.
Are the entry-level salaries too low, or are there just not people out there that want to work at these
Yeah,
jobs?
there are different factors that play into that. I would say essentially is, yeah, the wages, right? It's not attractive. People have taken the pandemic. The pandemic has been a time for individuals to really reassess their life and see what their priorities are. Some individuals or households have been working on one income or 1.5. And so the individuals that were placed before in the workplace are not interested or are gone to a different industry or reskilled or upskilled. And so those are different elements. It's a pretty complex discussion. Yeah.
I don't imagine you'll solve it overnight, but thank you.
Correct. Yes. Thank you for your question.
Okay, Annie?
Thank you, Rosemary, for your presentation. I know there's a lot of factors, as you were just discussing with Mike, about issues with trying to fill a lot of the positions locally. And I know one of the things you mentioned was childcare before. And as we all know, there's a childcare desert here in this area. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you, or I guess probably the only question I can think of right now, is just if you wanted to tell us how your move to your new location has gone.
Great, fabulous. We're co-located with IAD. We're really enjoying our new space. We're all settled in. We had the pleasure to have Bridget and the rest of the safety building committee attend today and do a quick walkthrough and just chat a little bit more how we can improve our work environment, workspace. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Rosemary? Thank you, Rosemary.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, I'd like to think that I've really impressed you all with the need to be crisp and to the point, but I think that a lot of the reason why we've moved through these hearings so quickly is because Lisa has terrified all of our department heads into sticking with a maintenance of effort only budget. So it doesn't give us a lot of stuff to ask questions about. I warn you, especially those of you who are new to this, that once we start having legislator filed OTRs, there'll be a lot more meat for us to pick, and our meetings may not go quite so quickly. Anyway, so I think the last item on our agenda is the county historian, and Carol is here. Welcome, Carol. So much. Well, we're glad to have you. And Carol's presentation, the budget pages, section 4-44 of your book.
I'd like to thank the legislature for its support of the county historian's position and also for what you have done for the Historical Commission. In particular, I'd like to thank Mike Lane for all he's done, keeping us on track, doing things for us that I didn't even know needed to be done. And I have brought with me my technician. My technician is Joe Mariani.
You could do a lot worse.
So this is the budget for both the county historian and the Historical Commission. And there's not much to say about what the historian does, except I try to do whatever needs to be done. But the Historical Commission has been exceedingly busy. And I think Joe is going to take over. Are you? Go, Joe. These are pamphlets that we have created. They're each about 60 pages long. They are to represent those topics that often are not represented in local history. So there's one about this one about the Gayahono people. There's one about ethnicity in Tompkins County. There is one about the county itself and how it came into being. And there's one that you should read about how the county has voted in every presidential election. and it's not what you expect. Or at least I don't think it's what you expect. Am I supposed to do something else, boss?
Are there any more slides?
I think Joe has more. Do you have?
You need to come up where there's a microphone, Joe.
I've never traveled with a technician before.
It's difficult traveling with staff.
It's very nice.
So I think what we wanted to do is to highlight the outcomes of what's been accomplished over the few
Need your
years
mic.
that the commission has been in existence. You'd think I'd be more practiced at this, wouldn't you, Bi?
Yes, you
Sure.
would.
So Carol talked about all the publications that we've done, and we've done many. But as kind of a sub outcome, our goal has been to highlight individuals, events, activities that have been historically marginalized or underrepresented, underrecognized. So a couple of the publications relate to that. But also, we're involved in a historical statues project, and we brought that to the legislature several months ago to talk about what was being done. There's been an anonymous gift of $500,000. Commissioned 2 statues, one of which will be of Francis Perkins, and the second, a local figure who many of you know, Lucy Brown. These will be installed at INHS properties in 2024. They are well underway right now. And the third element of that is through our webpage, through plaques. There's been a series of suffrage plaques placed on properties throughout the community, and also signage. And yet to be placed, but soon to be placed, will be along Cayuga Street, both in the city, in Groton, and in Trumansburg, signs that are in the indigenous language for Cayuga. And so we're hoping those will go up over the course of the next few months. Carol, do you want to carry it from here?
Are there any questions about what we're doing?
Does
Are there
anyone,
any things you think we should be doing?
does anyone have questions for Carol and Joe?
I'll just finish up with the numbers. We'll get through the numbers. The budget's very simple and very small. The historian stipend is $10,000. The commission has a recommended budget of $5,000 for the kinds of activities that you've seen in this presentation. So the total budget is $15,000. There's no change from 2022. It's target funding. And there it is in the county spreadsheet. So you can see how it flows out. That's it.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Carol. Do we have questions for Carol or Joe? Mike Lane.
Carol, you talked about the publications the Historical Commission is doing. I thought there was some good news about one of them recently. Do you want to share that?
The publication that we commissioned Kurt Jordan to write. Kurt is a professor of Indigenous and Indian history at Cornell, about the history of the Gayahono, has been selected by Cornell as its community read, and it has bought 300 copies. And that pamphlet alone has sold more than 1,000 copies. The commission gets no money whatsoever. The monies for the publications go into either the History Center or Historic Ithaca or an organization we designate, because we do not collect money. So we're very proud of that. And it is the first publication about the Cayuga people, the Gayahono. There is relatively little known about them, very little written historically. So what Kurt has done is a real contribution to what we know about them. And interestingly and bravely, he brings the story right up to the present. And you all know that the present is complicated.
Speaking of which, there was an article just in the last, speaking of which, there was an article in the last day or two, I think it was in Ithaca Voice.
Yep.
Detailing the dissension and almost civil war that they seem to be having right at the moment.
There's a great division within the tribe itself. There are traditionalists who want things done in a more traditional fashion. There are modernists who want to be more entrepreneurial. The traditionalists are fairly slow, in what they're doing, and the modernists seem to be burning buildings to get their way. It really is the one tribe of the Confederacy of the Haudenosaunee that is not in good array.
Yeah, it seems very, very messy. Does anybody have, Rich?
I would break budget rules to make a non-budget comment and commend Joe on his book, because I did see it, and Political Tompkins is a good read.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
We have time to diverge, so if anybody else has anything else they want to mention. Okay, I think we're good. Thank you,
And
Carol.
I'm sorry I wasn't here earlier, but I got here at your time.
No, I know, we've just been whipping through things and surprising people.
Does it surprise you? I mean, you really are doing well. I watch you on TV and I find your meetings really very interesting. So,
I'm
thank
happy to
you.
hear it. Okay, everyone, we will be having another short executive session to continue our discussion of contract negotiations. So I would entertain a motion for that purpose. Thank you, Greg. A second by Travis. Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute break so that we can reassemble in executive session. Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting about that. Okay, all in favor? Okay, that's unanimous, and we will
Thank
take
you
a short
very
break.
much.
Thank you, Carol, and I think we have something for you.
Yes, Mike would take it. He's reliable.
We will not take it.
He's trying to give it to you, Carol.
As long as you're not going to be an hour for this executive session.
No.
Okay.
Excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's all right. It's me.
That's my recycling.